Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody bothers to notice. The words echoed faintly in Lily Carter's mind as she stood frozen in the middle of the company cafeteria, her fingers tightening around a paper coffee cup that had already gone lukewarm, her heart pounding louder than the hum of conversations and clinking silverware around her, and right in front of her, her manager's voice cut through the air again, sharp but controlled, the kind of tone that didn't need to be loud to make everyone look. I asked for one simple report, Lily, just one, and somehow you still managed to get it wrong. A few people glanced over, then quickly looked away, pretending not to listen, but the silence that followed said everything. Lily swallowed hard, her cheeks burning. I double-checked the numbers, she said softly, trying to keep her voice steady. Then maybe you should learn how to check better, he replied, already turning away like the conversation was beneath him, like she was. And just like that, it was over, except it wasn't, because the weight of it lingered, heavy, suffocating. She exhaled slowly and turned, looking for the nearest empty seat, anywhere she could disappear for 5 minutes, just 5, and that's when she saw him, a man sitting alone at the far end of the long table, dressed simply, nothing remarkable, no tailored suit, no polished watch, just a dark jacket, sleeves slightly rolled, a quiet presence that didn't seem to belong to the chaos around him. For a second she hesitated, then walked over anyway, sliding into the seat across from him with a small, apologetic smile. Sorry if that was a lot, she said, setting her coffee down, her hands still slightly shaking. The man looked up, his eyes calm, observant. I've seen worse, he said simply, his voice low, steady, something about it oddly grounding. Lily let out a small breath, almost a laugh. Yeah, me too, she admitted, glancing down at the untouched sandwich on her tray, then back at him. You new here? She asked, tilting her head slightly. He paused for just a fraction of a second, then nodded. You could say that. Lily gave a faint smile, pushing half her sandwich toward him without thinking. First week's the worst, trust me, people don't really see you yet, she said, her tone light but carrying something deeper underneath. He looked at the sandwich, then back at her, surprised. You're offering me your lunch? He asked. Lily shrugged. It's not much, but it's better than nothing, she said, her voice soft but sincere, and for a moment, neither of them spoke, the noise of the cafeteria fading into the background, because in that small, ordinary gesture, something shifted, something quiet but undeniable, and Lily didn't know it yet, but the man sitting across from her, the one she had just shared her lunch with like he was nobody, owned every floor of the building she was standing in, every desk, every office, every decision that had ever made her feel small, and right now, he was watching her not like a boss, not like a billionaire, but like someone seeing something rare for the very first time. The cafeteria noise slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but something about the moment lingered, like a quiet pause that neither of them rushed to break. Lily took a small sip of her coffee, wincing slightly at the bitterness, then let out a soft breath. You picked a strange day to start, she said, glancing around at the busy room. It is always like this, the man replied calmly, his eyes scanning the space as if he was seeing more than just people eating lunch. Lily gave a faint shrug. Pretty much, just with less public humiliation on a normal day, she added with a half-smile that did not quite reach her eyes. He studied her for a moment, not in a way that felt invasive, but thoughtful, as if he was trying to understand something beyond her words. You handled it well, he said. Lily blinked, surprised, then shook her head lightly. No, I just stood there and took it, she corrected. That is not the same thing, he said, his tone steady, almost certain. She looked at him again, this time a little more curious. You always this philosophical on your first week? She asked, a hint of humor slipping through. He allowed the smallest smile. Only when I am learning something important. Lily let out a quiet laugh, the tension in her shoulders easing just a little. She pushed the sandwich closer to him again when she noticed he had not taken a bite yet. Go ahead, seriously, it is not great, but it gets you through the day, she said. He nodded once and finally took a bite, slow, deliberate, like it mattered more than it should. You said people do not really see you yet, he said after a moment. Lily nodded, tracing the rim of her cup with her finger. Yeah, you are just another face, another badge. Another person trying not to mess up. She paused, then added more quietly, and sometimes even when they do see you, it does not really change anything. there was no bitterness in her voice, just a kind of tired honesty that felt heavier than anger. He leaned back slightly, watching her. "And why stay?" he asked. Lily exhaled, glancing toward the large glass windows overlooking the city, the skyline stretching endlessly in the afternoon light. "Because I need the paycheck," she said plainly. Then after a beat, "And because I keep hoping one day it will be different." He followed her gaze, but his expression shifted almost imperceptibly, as if her words had landed somewhere deeper than expected. "Different how?" he asked. Lily smiled faintly. "Fair, I guess," she said, "where people are treated like they matter, not just like they are replaceable." She shrugged lightly, as if she had said too much. "Sounds unrealistic, right?" He did not answer right away, his eyes returning to her. Sharper now, more focused. "No," he said quietly, "it sounds necessary." Lily blinked again, caught off guard by the certainty in his voice. For a moment she just looked at him, trying to place it. Something about the way he spoke, the way he listened, it did not match the simplicity of his appearance, but she pushed the thought aside, shaking her head slightly. "Well, good luck surviving your first week," she said, standing up and grabbing her tray. "If you make it past Friday, you will be doing better than most." He stood as well, almost instinctively. "And you?" he asked. Lily gave a small, almost ironic smile. "I just have to make it through today," she replied, then turned to leave, but paused for half a second, glancing back at him. "Hey," she said, "what is your name?" He met her eyes, just for a moment, something unreadable passing through his expression before he answered. "Ethan." Lily nodded. "Lily," she said softly, as if sealing something unspoken, then walked away, unaware that behind her, Ethan remained standing a second longer than necessary, watching her disappear into the crowd, his mind already shifting, already calculating, because for the first time in a long time, something inside the company he had built did not look the way he thought it did, and it started with her. By the time Lily returned to her desk on the 23rd floor, the moment in the cafeteria already felt like something distant, almost unreal, swallowed by the constant clicking of keyboards and the low murmur of conversations that never quite stopped. She placed her empty coffee cup beside her monitor and logged back into her system, her inbox immediately flooding her screen with unread emails marked urgent, revisions, corrections, reminders, as if the brief pause she had taken for lunch had somehow made everything worse. She exhaled slowly and rolled her shoulders back, whispering to herself, "Just get through the day." But before she could even open the first file, a notification popped up on her screen. "Company-wide meeting, 4 o'clock, mandatory attendance, location, main conference hall." Lily frowned slightly. That was unusual. Company-wide meetings were rare and usually planned weeks in advance. She glanced around, noticing the same confusion ripple quietly across the office, people checking their screens, exchanging looks, whispering guesses. Did something happen? Someone muttered nearby. Lily shook her head faintly and turned back to her work, pushing the thought aside. She did not have the luxury to wonder, she just needed to stay invisible, stay careful, stay employed. The next few hours blurred together, numbers, spreadsheets, corrections, each task stacking on top of the other until her eyes began to ache from staring at the screen. At one point her manager passed by her desk, barely glancing in her direction, but the tension in her chest tightened anyway, as if she was bracing for something that might come again. When the clock finally hit 3:45, the office began to shift, chairs sliding back, people standing, gathering their things, conversations growing louder with speculation. Lily hesitated for a moment, staring at the email again, then slowly stood up and followed the flow of employees toward the elevators. The ride down felt longer than usual, packed shoulder to shoulder, the quiet hum of anticipation filling the small space. Someone whispered, "Maybe it is about restructuring," another replied, "or layoffs." Lily's stomach dropped slightly at that word, layoffs. She pressed her lips together and said nothing. When the doors finally opened to the main conference hall, the room was already filling quickly, rows of chairs stretching across the floor, a large stage at the front with a massive screen behind it displaying the company logo, polished, impressive, distant. Lily found a seat near the back. Instinctively choosing a place where she could observe without being noticed, she sat down and folded her hands in her lap, her fingers lacing together tightly, trying to ignore the quiet tension building in the room, her mind drifting for just a second back to the cafeteria, to the man who had called himself Ethan, the calm way he had spoken, the way he had listened, something about it still lingered, though she could not explain why. She shook the thought away and focused forward, the lights in the room dimmed slightly, conversations faded into silence, and then movement at the side of the stage caught her attention, a figure stepping into view, dressed now in a tailored suit, posture straight, presence commanding in a way that shifted the entire energy of the room without a single word spoken. Lily's breath caught before her mind could catch up, her eyes widening as recognition hit her all at once, not slowly, not gently, but all at once like a sudden drop, because the man walking confidently toward the center of the stage, the man every executive in the front row immediately stood for, the man whose name she had seen countless times in company emails but had never once seen in person, was Ethan, the same man who had sat across from her just hours ago, the same man who had quietly taken a bite of her sandwich, the same man she had treated like he was just another new hire trying to survive his first week, and in that moment, as the room fell completely silent and every eye turned toward him, Lily felt her world tilt slightly, because nothing about today was what she thought it was anymore. The silence in the conference hall was not just quiet, it was heavy, pressing down on every person in the room as Ethan reached the center of the stage, his presence no longer subtle or hidden, but undeniable, authoritative, the kind that made people sit straighter without being told. Lily felt her pulse in her ears, her fingers tightening in her lap as her mind replayed every word she had said to him just hours ago. Every casual sentence, every unfiltered thought, her stomach twisting as realization settled deeper. He was not new, he was not just another employee, he was the one who owned everything, the building, the company, her job, her future, and yet he had sat across from her like it meant nothing, like he was just a stranger passing through. Ethan adjusted the microphone slightly, his expression calm, composed, but his eyes sharper now, scanning the room with a quiet intensity that made it clear he missed nothing. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began. His voice steady, carrying effortlessly across the room, a voice that did not need to demand attention because it already had it. Lily lowered her gaze for a second, unable to meet it, as if somehow he might look directly at her again. "Today is not about numbers," he continued, pausing just enough for the words to settle. "It is about something far more important." A ripple of uncertainty moved through the crowd. Subtle but present, people shifting slightly in their seats, exchanging quick glances. Ethan took a slow step forward, his posture relaxed but deliberate. "Culture," he said simply, and the words seemed to hang in the air longer than expected. Lily felt her breath catch slightly, her thoughts racing. "Culture," she thought, remembering her own words from earlier. Remembering how easily she had said them, how honestly, not knowing who was listening. Ethan continued, "This company was built on the idea that people matter, that talent matters, that effort matters." His tone remained even, but there was something beneath it now, something firmer. "But today, I witnessed something that does not reflect that." The room grew even quieter. If that was possible, Lily's heart dropped. A cold wave of realization moving through her chest. He had seen it, all of it. The cafeteria, the conversation, her manager, everything. Her eyes lifted slightly, almost against her will, and for a brief second, their gazes met, just a second, but it was enough to make her look away immediately, her cheeks warming with a mix of embarrassment and something she could not quite name. Ethan's voice continued, calm but unmistakably pointed. "Respect is not optional here, it is the foundation," he said. His words clear, deliberate, and when that foundation cracks, it is my responsibility to fix it. A murmur began to build, low and uncertain, people trying to understand where this was going. Lily's chest tightened, her thoughts spinning. What was he going to do? What did this mean? For her job, for everything. Ethan paused again, letting the tension rise just enough, then spoke. "So we are going to address it," he said, and in that moment, Lily felt the air shift again. Like something was about to change in a way that could not be undone, her fingers curling slightly against her palms as she sat there, caught between fear and disbelief, because whatever was coming next, she knew one thing for certain, nothing about her life inside this company was going to stay the same after today. The tension in the room tightened like a held breath as Ethan let his words settle, his gaze moving slowly across the crowd, not rushed, not uncertain, but deliberate, as if every second of silence was part of the message itself. Lily sat perfectly still, her pulse racing, her thoughts tangled between fear and something sharper, anticipation, because she knew now this was not a routine meeting, this was something else entirely. Ethan turned slightly toward the front row where the senior management sat, their posture suddenly more rigid than before. Earlier today, he continued, his voice calm but carrying a weight that made every word land harder, I observed an interaction in our cafeteria. A ripple moved through the room, subtle but unmistakable, people shifting, whispering under their breath, trying to piece together what he meant. Lily's stomach dropped, her hands tightening together as she stared at the floor for a brief second, wishing she could disappear. Ethan did not raise his voice, but the clarity in it cut through everything. An employee was publicly criticized in a way that did not reflect accountability, but dismissal, he said, pausing just long enough for the meaning to sink in. The silence that followed was sharper now, more focused. Eyes began to shift toward different parts of the room, searching, guessing, and then, slowly, almost reluctantly, attention began to turn toward Lily's manager sitting several rows ahead, his posture stiff, his expression carefully neutral but no longer confident. Lily felt her chest tighten, her breath shallow. She did not look up, she did not need to, she could feel it, the shift, the awareness. Ethan took a step forward, his presence steady, unshaken. Leadership is not about control, he said, it is about responsibility, and when that responsibility is misused, it affects more than one person. It affects the entire culture. His words were not loud, but they carried through the room with a precision that left no space for misunderstanding. Lily's manager shifted slightly in his seat, adjusting his jacket, attempting to maintain composure, but the tension around him was visible now, unmistakable. Ethan's gaze settled in that direction for just a moment, not lingering, but enough, effective immediately. He continued, his tone unchanged. We will be making changes to ensure that accountability and respect are upheld at every level. A murmur spread again, louder this time, confusion mixed with surprise. Lily's heart pounded harder, her thoughts racing. What did that mean? What was going to happen? Ethan paused once more, then added, human resources will be following up with the individuals involved, and a full review of management conduct will begin today. The words were measured, controlled, but their impact was immediate, the shift in the room undeniable. Lily finally lifted her gaze slightly, her eyes moving forward, her chest rising and falling as she tried to steady her breathing. She did not know what she expected, anger, dismissal, something harsh, but this was different. It was structured, intentional, something that reached beyond just a single moment. Ethan's expression softened just slightly, not losing authority, but adding something else, something quieter. And to the employee who handled that moment with grace, he said, his voice lowering just enough to change the tone, to make it personal without naming her, that did not go unnoticed. Lily's breath caught, her eyes widening slightly as the word settled, not announced, not exposed, but acknowledged. And somehow that felt even more overwhelming. Her fingers loosened slightly in her lap, a strange warmth mixing with the lingering nerves, because in that moment, she realized something she had not expected. She had not been invisible after all. And as the room slowly began to shift again, conversation starting to rise, people processing what they had just witnessed, Lily sat there quietly, her world still adjusting, because the man she thought was just another stranger had not only seen everything, he had changed it. The meeting did not end with applause, it ended with a silence that felt different from before, not heavy, but unsettled, like the ground beneath everyone had shifted just enough to make them question where they stood. As people slowly began to rise from their seats, conversation started to build in low, cautious tones. Lily remained seated for a moment longer, her hands resting loosely in her lap now. Her thoughts still catching up to everything that had just happened. She replayed his words again in her mind, especially that last part, the way he had acknowledged her without naming her, without exposing her, and somehow that felt more personal than anything else he could have said. She exhaled slowly and finally stood up, blending into the flow of employees moving toward the exits, her eyes staying forward, avoiding the glances she could already feel from people around her, some curious, some uncertain, as if they were trying to figure out if she was the one. When she stepped into the hallway, the noise grew louder, clusters of employees forming quickly, voices overlapping. Did you hear that? Who was he talking about? This is going to change everything. Lily kept walking, her pace steady but her heart still uneven. She just wanted to get back to her desk, to something familiar, something quiet. But before she could reach the elevators, a voice called out from behind her, Lily. She stopped instantly, her shoulders tensing slightly before she turned around. Her manager was standing a few feet away, his expression no longer sharp or dismissive, but something else, something controlled, almost careful. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" he asked, his tone noticeably different from earlier. Lily hesitated for just a fraction of a second, then nodded. "Sure," she replied quietly. They stepped aside into a small corner near the glass wall, the city visible behind them, distant and bright. He cleared his throat slightly, adjusting his stance. "About earlier," he began, pausing briefly as if choosing his words more carefully than he ever had before. "I may have been too direct." Lily blinked once. The understatement almost surreal compared to what had happened, but she kept her expression neutral. "I understand the importance of accuracy," she said calmly, her voice steady despite the tension still lingering in her chest. He nodded quickly. "Yes, of course, and your work has been consistent," he added, as if trying to reinforce something, anything, that would shift the narrative. Lily studied him for a moment. Not with anger, but with a quiet clarity she had not felt before. Something had changed, not just in the room, but in her. "Thank you," she said simply, not pushing, not challenging, just acknowledging. He seemed to relax slightly at that, though the stiffness in his posture remained. "Human resources will likely follow up," he continued, his voice lowering just a bit, "but I want you to know that your position here is secure." Lily felt a small, unexpected shift in her chest at those words, not relief exactly, but something close to it. She nodded once. "I appreciate that," she replied, and for a moment, neither of them said anything else, the silence between them no longer uncomfortable, just different. Then he gave a short nod and stepped back. "Good," he said, "I will see you tomorrow." Lily watched him walk away, her mind processing the exchange, the contrast between earlier and now almost hard to reconcile. She turned back toward the elevators, stepping inside as the doors closed softly, and for the first time that day, she allowed herself to breathe a little easier. But as the elevator began to rise, her thoughts shifted again, not to her manager, not to the meeting, but to Ethan, the way he had looked at her, the way he had spoken, the way he had seen something in her that no one else had seemed to notice before. And as the numbers above the door ticked upward, one floor at a time, Lily realized something she had not expected. This was not the end of whatever had started in that cafeteria, it was only the beginning. The rest of the afternoon passed in a strange, quiet blur, the kind where everything looked the same but felt completely different. Lily sat at her desk staring at her screen, the familiar rows of numbers and reports no longer holding her focus the way they usually did. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard but did not move, her thoughts drifting back again and again to the same moment, the same voice, the same look. She had told him people were not really seen here, and somehow, without warning, he had proven her wrong in the most public way possible. She shook her head slightly and forced herself to refocus, typing a few lines, correcting a figure, trying to return to something normal, but normal did not seem to exist anymore, not after today, not after him. A soft notification sound pulled her attention to the corner of her screen. She glanced down, expecting another task, another revision. But instead, it was a message, internal system, direct request, her name at the top, followed by a subject line that made her pause. Meeting request. Her brows furrowed slightly as she clicked it open, her eyes scanning the short message. "Lily Carter, please report to the executive office on the top floor at 6 p.m. There was no signature, no explanation, just a time, a place, and a weight behind it that made her pulse quicken instantly. The top floor. She swallowed slowly, her mind racing. That was where the executive offices were, where decisions were made, where people like her did not go unless something was very wrong, or very important. Her first instinct was to question it, to assume it was a mistake, but something deep down told her it was not. She glanced around the office, no one else seemed to have noticed, no one looking at her, no one reacting, which somehow made it feel even more personal. She leaned back slightly in her chair, exhaling through her nose, trying to steady herself. 6 p.m., that gave her less than 2 hours. Her thoughts began to spiral. What did he want? Was this about earlier? Was she in trouble, or was this something else entirely? She pressed her lips together, closing the message, but the words stayed in her mind, persistent, unavoidable. The rest of the time crawled by, each minute stretching longer than it should, every glance at the clock making her more aware of what was coming. When 5:50 finally arrived, the office had already begun to empty. people packing up, saying quick goodbyes. Unaware that for Lily, the day was not ending, it was shifting into something she could not predict. She stood slowly, smoothing down the front of her blouse, her movements controlled but her heart anything but. She grabbed her bag, hesitated for just a second, then stepped toward the elevators. The ride up felt longer than any she had taken before, each floor number lighting up one after the other, 24, 25, 26, until finally, the doors opened to a hallway that felt quieter, more refined, the kind of place where every detail was intentional, the carpet softer under her shoes, the lighting warmer, the air itself almost still. She stepped out carefully, her footsteps softer now, her eyes scanning the hallway until she saw it, a large set of glass doors at the end. Beyond them, a spacious office, lights still on, a silhouette visible inside. Her breath caught slightly as she slowed her steps, her hand tightening around the strap of her bag. She knew before she even reached the door, before she even knocked, exactly who was waiting for her on the other side, and as she stopped just outside, her reflection faintly visible in the glass, she realized this moment felt nothing like the cafeteria, nothing casual, nothing accidental. This was intentional, and whatever was about to happen next, it was not going to be something she could walk away from the same way. For a few seconds, Lily just stood there, her hand hovering inches from the glass door, her reflection staring back at her with a mix of hesitation and disbelief. She could still walk away, she thought, pretend she never saw the message, pretend this day had ended like any other, but deep down she knew that was no longer possible, not after everything that had already changed. She took a slow breath and knocked lightly against the glass. The sound soft but clear in the quiet hallway, inside. Ethan looked up immediately, as if he had been expecting her, which of course he had. He crossed the room in a few calm steps and opened the door himself, no assistant, no barrier, just him, standing there in the same composed presence, though now it carried something more direct, more intentional. "Lily," he said simply, his voice steady, the same tone from earlier, but without the distance of a stage or a crowd. She swallowed lightly and nodded. "You wanted to see me," she replied, keeping her voice controlled, though she could feel the tension in it. He stepped aside, gesturing for her to come in. "Yes," he said, "please." She hesitated only a second before stepping inside. The office was larger than she had imagined, but not overwhelming. Clean lines, wide windows stretching across the wall, the city glowing in the early evening light. It felt powerful, but not cold. She stopped a few steps in, unsure where to stand, unsure what this was. Ethan closed the door quietly behind her, the soft click echoing more than it should have, and for a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence between them different from before, not awkward, but charged, like something important was waiting to be said. Lily was the first to break it. "I did not know who you were," she said, the words coming out more quickly than she intended, her hands tightening slightly at her sides. "In the cafeteria, I mean." Ethan's expression did not change, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, not surprise, not judgment, something closer to understanding. "I know," he replied calmly. She let out a small breath, almost a nervous laugh. "If I had known, I would not have said half of what I said," she admitted, then immediately regretted it, because it sounded like she was apologizing for being honest. Ethan took a small step closer, not enough to invade her space, but enough to shift the distance between them. "That is exactly why it mattered," he said, his voice low but clear. Lily blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" she asked, her brows drawing together slightly. Ethan held her gaze steadily. "You spoke to me like I was just another person," he said, "not like someone you needed to impress, not like someone you were afraid of." Lily looked at him, her thoughts slowing just enough to process that. "Because I thought you were," she said quietly. Ethan nodded once. "Exactly," he replied, and there was no sarcasm in it, no edge, just certainty. He moved slightly toward his desk, picking up something small, then turning back toward her. "Do you remember this?" he asked, holding it out. Lily's eyes dropped to his hand, and her breath caught for a second. It was the sandwich, or what was left of it, wrapped neatly in a napkin. She stared at it, then back at him, confusion and disbelief mixing in her expression. "You kept it?" she asked softly. Ethan gave a faint, almost thoughtful smile. "You gave it to someone you thought had nothing to offer you," he said. "That is not something I ignore." Lily felt something shift in her chest. At those words, something deeper than embarrassment, deeper than nerves, something real, she looked at the sandwich again, then back at him. It was just lunch, she said, almost instinctively, but even as she said it, she knew it had not been just that. Ethan shook his head slightly. No, he said quietly, it was not, and in that moment, standing there in his office, with the city stretching out behind him and the weight of everything that had happened still settling around them, Lily realized that this conversation was not about a mistake, not about a meeting, it was about something much bigger, something that had started with something small, something simple, something she had not even thought twice about at the time, and now, it had led her here. For a moment, neither of them moved, the quiet stretching between them as the last light of the evening settled across the skyline, casting a warm glow through the glass behind Ethan. Lily felt it then, not the tension from earlier, not the uncertainty, but something steadier, something grounding, like the chaos of the day had finally slowed enough for her to understand it. She looked at him, really looked this time, not as a stranger, not as the man from the cafeteria, but as someone who had chosen to step into her world without announcing who he was. Why did you do it? She asked softly, her voice calm but filled with genuine curiosity. Ethan tilted his head slightly. Do what? He asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. Lily held his gaze. Sit there, say nothing, pretend you were just anyone, she said, searching for the right words. Ethan exhaled quietly, setting the napkin with the sandwich carefully on his desk, his movements unhurried, deliberate. Because when people know who I am, he said, they do not show me who they are. Lily absorbed that, her thoughts shifting. It made sense in a way she had not considered before. She had seen it herself, how people changed around authority, how voices softened, how honesty disappeared. She nodded faintly. So you were testing people, she said, not accusing, just understanding. Ethan shook his head slightly. No, he replied. I was trying to understand them. There was a difference in that, subtle but important, and Lily felt it. She crossed her arms lightly, not defensive, just grounding herself. And what did you learn? She asked. Ethan's gaze did not leave hers. That most people perform, he said simply, but some do not. Lily's breath slowed, the meaning clear without him needing to explain further. She glanced down for a second, then back up. And now what? She asked, because that was the part that mattered. What happened after the moment, after the realization? Ethan stepped a little closer, the distance between them now intentional, not accidental. Now I fix what needs to be fixed, he said, his voice steady, and I invest in what is worth building. Lily felt that land, not as pressure, not as expectation, but as possibility, something she had not allowed herself to think about before. You are talking about the company, she said carefully. Ethan gave a faint smile. Not just the company, he replied, and for a second, the meaning behind that lingered between them, unspoken but understood. Lily let out a small breath, her shoulders relaxing in a way they had not all day. I am not anything special, she said quietly, the honesty in her voice unfiltered. Ethan's expression softened just slightly. You were kind when it was not required, he said. You were honest when it was not safe. He paused, just enough to let the words settle. That is rare. Lily felt her chest tighten, not from fear this time, but from something deeper, something that felt like being seen in a way she had not expected. She looked at him, her thoughts clearer now. So what happens next? She asked, her voice steady. Ethan reached for a folder on his desk and held it out to her. There is a new initiative starting, he said, focused on internal culture and employee experience. Lily hesitated for a fraction of a second before taking it.